Everybody loves good cinematography, but sound is half the movie. These are the top 10 sound design films of all time. Kicking us off at number 10, we're looking at war films. Often some of the most intensely designed soundscapes happen on the battlefield. And while Hurt Locker and Zero Dark 30 sound great for their use of sound and Black Hawk Down for its creative lack thereof, there's no battle more intense than those from Saving Private Ryan. Designed by the likes of Gary Rydstrom, who also gave us Terminator 2 and Jurassic Park, the sound of Saving Private Ryan is one of the key vehicles of its storytelling. In a film where the visual perspective is as subjective and limited as the POV of just one character, it was up to Rydstrom to create the massive soundscape of an entire war that was foregone on camera. Steven Spielberg approached Gary from the get-go with the mandate that the film must not sound Hollywood, and we probably all know what that means. Canned sounds, ridiculous gunshots, and that weird Wilhelm scream. Spielberg and Rydstrom instead set out to get World War II right and capture the sounds authentically, not just from a sonic perspective, but from an emotional one as well. And nowhere is this more apparent than in the massive battles that bookend the film. From the sounds of the shell shock to bobbing up and down between the chaos of battle and the cocoon of the ocean to the looming sounds of dread made by the approaching tanks, Saving Private Ryan nails it, which is why we think that this movie is definitely worth a listen. At number 7, we're turning to the haunting sounds of Andrei Tarkovsky. And while Solaris deserves an honorable mention, our pick goes to Stalker. What is there to say about Stalker? The sound shifts in and out of what we would call reality in every scene. Time turns back on itself, and with it, the sounds of the world. Tarkovsky paints with sound much like he does with visuals, impressionistically, subconsciously, artistically. He wields a massive array of techniques and uses them to create an experience rather than concrete communication. Sound is divorced from image and then jarringly tied back to it. It often lingers, sometimes returns, and might even come from nowhere at all. The sound effects are composed much like the score. There's a musical quality about them, an atmosphere to them. Emotions over logic. Stalker is sound as art, which is why it is right up there on any must-hear list. But if there's one sci-fi film we haven't mentioned, it's coming up next with our number 4, and it's gotta be Star Wars. Ben Burtt is the man to thank for this film, and also quite possibly one of the original pioneers of modern sound in cinema. He combined the jobs of sound recordist, sound editor, and sound mixer into something that wasn't quite any of them, but more of a creative leader who shepherded the sound from start to finish, and in doing so, created the role of sound designer. Still a graduate student at USC at the time, Burtt was given carte blanche to work from his SoCal apartment and took a year to gather all the sounds for the film in order to achieve Lucas's idea of an organic-sounding sci-fi. There would be no excess of digital synthesizers. Instead, the film would use real-world sounds in unique ways so that the worlds of Star Wars would sound half familiar, half alien. He used punch presses for Imperial walkers, elephants for TIE fighters, walruses for Wookiees, and the hum of TVs and projectors for lightsabers. The result was as much out of this world as it was from it, and because of it, in our book, Ben Burtt is a sound design legend. And finally, at number 1, there couldn't be a sound design list without the godfather of sound, Walter Murch. And he's got quite the resume, but while Godfather 2 and Apocalypse Now top the list of his most famous credits, there couldn't be any other pick for sound design but The Conversation. It's a movie about sound, about listening, about recording and editing audio, so it's only natural that there is some incredible sound design central to the story. A lot of the genius of The Conversation is in combining some of the effects we've talked about earlier. We hear how Harry Caul hears, and when the dialogue falls away in the second half of the film, we begin to pay more attention to the sounds of the little things. In Murch's opinion, dialogue often holds all the mind's attention, but when we get rid of it, we are free to listen to the other sounds that make up the movie. And so we are drawn in to listen over and over. We repeat the tape, we relive the thematic audio and obsess over it like Call. It fuels our concern, our fear, our paranoia, much like his. But as we've seen is the case, what interests us most isn't what we do here, but what we don't. And this is where the conversation really shines, which is why we think it's the best sound designed film of all time.